There's a nice pace to this. Nobody in the whiskey game can be in a hurry, otherwise you'll be awfully frustrated. I've worked on some great global brands over my career, but I've never struck a brand that has the connection that Jack Daniel's has around the world. I've never found a brand anything like it. Our challenge is to keep the brand special.
Hey, Phil. How are you? Good. See you.
A lot of the board members, they're not familiar with brands that have grown for 6 and 7 generations of humanity. And so here's this thing called Jack Daniel's, which the reason it can do that is because it's iconic. It's been adopted by culture, and not just American culture. It's been adopted by, around the world, that sort of quest for authenticity or realness. And Jack Daniel's just happens to, capture that.
How many of these are we good with?
Yeah.
Where we're having to recreate the image. The story's still real. We want the best image we can to interact with the copy. Kind of real.
Yeah.
Definitely real. Definitely real. And I'm talking imagery, not story.
So long as we, as the brand stewards, stay tight to what we can do, what we're allowed to do. Some types of advertising and some types of product development. The cultural industries will look after that brand, and it seems to be. Jack's sort of like American whiskey for the world, and now it's as big as it is. And with that sort of scale comes those challenges of how do you keep it as authentic as Lynchburg really is. I think, if told in a way that's unencumbered by ask the brand owner, whatever it is that has made it the world's most popular whiskey, if we could capture that, must be an interesting story.
The smell of the whiskey in the air, the smell of the maple wood burning. It's a special place.
You couldn't hardly talk about Jack Daniel without talking about Lynchburg.
You say Tennessee, they'll say 3 people. Elvis, Dolly, and Jax.
Lynchburg is really a beautiful place. I know it's small and it's a little country town, but the story is big. There's a lot of things we're still learning.
Planet Earth, it's large in scale, it's huge. Lynchburg would be lucky to be even a pin dot on it. But the one thing that people anywhere in the world will know is when you say Jack Daniel's.
Welcome to Jack Daniel's, welcome to Lynchburg.
They know that's good whiskey.
It's amazing that the product has got that big. Everybody knows about Jack worldwide.
America. You look at generations and where they came from and how hardworking they are. That means more to me than anything.
How would you describe what a movie about Jack Daniel's would be? Like, what genre would that be?
It should be a family movie, really. I'm from here. Being from a small town, Lynchburg is peaceful. It's quiet. Yeah, we ride to work together every morning.
My mother and her sister, they rode together. They lived next door to each other. They rode to work, went to grocery, went to church together, and now we're doing it.
Most people, when they start here, they stay here.
Family first.
It's always been about family, and it's not unusual to have father and sons working side by side. Generations of family that have worked here.
We make every drop here.
We're not near the interstate. We're on a 2-lane highway, so it takes some logistics to ship 160 countries from a small town like we are.
You get that question a lot? Is it really made all here?
Yeah, they do. They kind of question, from the beginning to the end process. And of course, my part is the export, shipping them overseas. UK, France, and Germany are typically our bigger bulk shipments.
Are there places that you've gotten orders and that make you jealous? Like, oh man, I really want to go there.
Yeah, Australia orders a lot of Jack Daniels, and I think that's a neat place I'd like to visit someday.
Occasionally I'll get somebody who's like, they can't believe that we don't have, a plant close to them, because they'll see Jack Daniels all around them, and like, really, every bottle is leaving Lynchburg and coming here, and I'm like, yeah. It doesn't really matter where you find it, it should be the same. The hands that are crafting it are the same, no matter whether it's in Nashville or South Africa or Australia.
Now this type of cave that we're looking at is a limestone cave spring. Gotta have iron-free water to make good whiskey. Jack ran away from home when he's about 10 years old, and he went and lived with his neighbor, who was a Lutheran minister, and that man's name was Dan Call. He had an enslaved man that worked on the farm with him named Nearest Green. Jack took interest in making whiskey with the preacher and Nearest Green when he was about 12 years old. He started making whiskey with them, but the church people didn't like the idea of Dan Call preaching to them and making whiskey, so they asked him to sell his still. So he ended up selling it to Jack Daniel for $25. He gets the still registered in 1866, and Jack Daniel would eventually bring that still to this area. And we still make all the whiskey right here in this hillside today. Now what you smell in the air, that's a sour mash. That's made out of corn, barley, malt, and rye. We're gonna grind it up and cook it with the water coming out of this cave.
It was an early Sunday morning and the church was crowded full. Old Elder Brown was raving, he was angry as a bull. The congregation sensed it and they knew just what he meant when he said, my text today is you sinners must repent. Who threw the whiskey in the well? In the well. Who threw the whiskey in the well? In the well. 'Cause Deacon Jones knelt down to pray. All he said was, hey, hey. So who threw the whiskey in the well?
The process is definitely designed to be consistent over time. There's so much technology out there, and we certainly are not bashful about using it where it's helpful. More importantly, there's nothing that tells you what something tastes like or what something smells like. A lot of the newer brands coming into our industry, they get a lot of props for being very crafty and clever and stuff like that. A lot of them are just buying a freeze-dried yeast that's commercially available. If you're using a commercially available freeze-dried yeast culture, there's a good chance that your product's going to taste very similar to everybody else who's using that same yeast. So we have a very pure culture for Jack Daniels, and it's cryogenically preserved here and also 2 other locations. So I call that the Coke formula or the Coke secret. That's the thing that we need to protect mostly to make sure that Jack Daniels' character doesn't change over time.
Where's your secret cryogenic freezer?
It's out back here. If you look down in here, there's the original jug yeast culture that has the full diversity of all the different things that have been in the Jack Daniel's yeast culture over the years. That would date back all the way to Prohibition, but it comes from that mother culture that's been here for forever. And this is one of the things that really I think is a strength for Jack Daniel's is we don't change much, you know, and over time, and we haven't changed over the years very much, and that's not by accident. I mean, we've been very deliberate about trying to be consistent in character. Making every drop here is important because, you know, people will say, you know, how do you know that Jack Daniel's today tastes like what it did 10 years ago? And how do you know 10 years from now that it's going to taste like what it tastes like today? And there's, you know, a handful of reasons. The way we handle the yeast culture, the way we check it and test for it, but the process is designed to not allow it to drift.
To be a bourbon is high standard. Jack Daniel's makes his whiskey like a bourbon, but then does bourbon one better by adding an extra, very costly step of charcoal mellowing every drop of whiskey through 10 feet of sugar maple charcoal. To be a Tennessee whiskey, you have to be charcoal mellowed. Without charcoal mellowing, Jack Daniel's is a bourbon.
Did Matthew McConaughey talk you into drinking Wild Turkey?
Absolutely not.
No way.
What about, could Mila Kunis talk you into drinking Jim Beam?
No way.
Even if you were just in a room with her and she was like, come on, Goose, just try it.
No.
Do you know the actor Matthew McConaughey?
I don't know him.
You know who he is?
Yeah,
Could he talk you into drinking Wild Turkey?
I doubt it.
Are there other types of whiskey you're drinking besides Jack Daniel's?
Not me. It's always Jack.
Why would you drink something else when for 41 years it's put a roof over your head?
Jack doesn't ever have a spokesperson.
Well, they have our town.
This is Lynchburg, Tennessee. This is how many people were born here. This many are fifth generation. This is how many are named Hiawatha Kitty McGee. He keeps the town dry. They'd prefer it a little wet. This many are proud of what we make here. This is how many will go around bragging about it. This is our town. If you can't get here, just look for one of our postcards. We send them all over. They look like this.
Getting all speakers right.
Right.
So it look good.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
There you go, big guy.
Now watch
This
it.
back here back
Now
Have a
watch
seat.
it, mine now. I mean, that feels good. My wife would be proud of me.
In this movie today, who's gonna be the main co-star between you and him?
No, you just never know.
It's all about a bottle of Jack and the people that makes it. We don't even have a barber in Lynchburg no more. He retired here about 3-4 years ago, and he cut my hair for a number of years, and the last time he cut it, so I went and I sat down. I told him, I said, I want it cut short on this side, long in the back, long on the right, and real short on top. He said, well, I can't cut it that way. I said, the hell you can't. You've been cutting it that way for 30 years.
Where's your favorite spot to go to for lunch in town?
You really want to know?
Yeah.
In the kitchen at Bobo's. What I do, I walk in and I say, State of Tennessee Health Inspector. They said, well, get you a piece of chicken and get out of here. State of Tennessee Health Inspector. Look at the chicken. How you doing?
You're all shaved up.
Don't I look good?
You look better.
Thank you,
My brother works at Jack Daniels. My brother-in-law worked at Jack Daniels. My nephew works at Jack Daniels. My mother worked at Jack Daniels. My daughter, my husband. You know, it's just like aunts and uncles. So yeah, it's really tight-knit.
The guy I date, like we'd been dating for about a month, and he was like, I'm kin to this person, and I was like, oh, I am too. And then we get to talking, but his is on one side and mine's on the other side, so it was all good, but then you're like, what?
How would you describe Lynchburg to someone that's never been here before?
Big in a small way.
This is not just a tourist community. This is not just Jack Daniel. It's not just Lynchburg souvenir. This is actually a productive working community. You know, business goes on every day, just like it does anywhere else. We're not here just to be a tourist town. We're here because it's a working community. We was raised up here. We like it here. We stay here because we love Lynchburg and we love Moore County.
The touchstone is when you go to Lynchburg, you know, and find some quiet time and just walk it. It's real. It's the realest real. It's the whiskiest whiskey. That's a...
Well, that's the song. Whiskey and alcohol play a role in anyone who is trying to fend off the natural disasters of life, man. I mean, it's like Charles Bukowski or like some guy at a bar, man. It's part of your life, man. You play shows every night in a bar.
Sometimes you drink from the stress. Sometimes you drink for the joy. Sometimes you drink for the creativity.
There are a couple brands where the brand got pulled so pervasively into popular culture that the company really stopped having anything to do with its vitality and importance. And there are very, very few of those. Jack Daniels was one of those. In the US, because we had this huge frontier and we're going out into these wilderness spaces, that kind of gave the American character and a very masculine character of the country. And that's what we thrived on for hundreds of years, frontier masculinity. That whole ideal got blown up after World War II. The new ideal was the corporate guy, you know, who's kind of the alpha male in the company. All these brands, they were trying to glom onto this next kind of aspirational masculine model because that's where the money was. But then the Cold War starts. And all of a sudden, nuclear Armageddon's on the table. So there was this huge contradiction between the guy sitting at his desk doing paperwork, you know, right, climbing the corporate ladder, and, you know, fighting the Russians for, you know, world stakes.
2 whiskeys.
Whiskey, what more frontier heritage category is there?
It starts out with a little advertising agency back in the 50s, and they're doing ads just like every other bourbon ad of its day, which is to show the product on a silver tray with a butler, somebody in a smoking jacket. And Jack Daniel's did something completely different. They showed the place and the people who made the whiskey, and it was really unheard of.
In the imagination of the country, Jack Daniel's was a place that was stuck in time. It wasn't part of the modern age. It wasn't part of this new masculinity. And this is the signature whiskey because they haven't bought into modern society, urban living. These are guys just like 100 years ago. This is the kind of masculinity we need now. And it gets taken up in the movie HUD, which was Paul Newman's breakout film, which really cements exactly its kind of cultural role. Whenever he's needing some buttress and buck himself up, he starts drinking Jack Daniels. It's like his truth serum.
Oh, Daddy, you ain't never been wrong.
Jack Daniels is allowing him to speak those speeches. So it becomes almost a crutch if you're making a film. Like, oh, we need a little bit of that, kind of frontier, badass, man's man guy character here. And Behringer doesn't quite have it here, so let's give him a bottle of Jack Daniels and that'll really...
Bottle of Jack.
I just love Coke with Jack Daniels.
How did you get through it? I had a lot of help from Jack Daniels.
It was the first whiskey most of us tried. It's just so common in our culture. It's the one brand people identify with. I don't think I use it to define a character. I use it to describe a scene. Lawyers sitting around a judge's chambers in the back of a courtroom, after work one day, and the judge wants to have a drink, and they pull out a bottle of Jack Daniels. It permeates culture everywhere.
I need a drink.
John Belushi in Animal House, when he sees the bottle of Jack Daniels fall over and break, he starts screaming, loses his mind. It's just, I don't know, it's just so common in our culture. It's the one brand people identify with.
Nothing's more manly, nothing's more dangerous than chugging a bottle of Jack. And it's the only whiskey that anybody knows anything about anyway that's recognizable. They had come to John and said, we can shoot you from this side. You can pour the booze into like the little spout over here and it'll look like you're drinking it. And he goes, why would I do that? I'll just drink it. And it was like, you can do that? And he goes, yeah, I can open my throat. It's tea, certainly. And that's him really drinking it.
Thanks. I needed that.
What else can you have for Bluto Plutarski to drink than Jack Daniels?
Hi, Lloyd.
My agent called, you got a show, it's called The Shining.
What lit the...
He says, you're playing the bartender. Now, I've never been behind the bar, I don't drink. Then one moment, I said, let me see what I will be serving. And there's a whole thing behind me of bottles of liquor, which I know nothing about, except one that stood out, and that was Jack Daniels. I said, Stanley, I don't know about liquor, but you got Jack Daniels, and this is supposed to be a 1920s set. He says, Joe, Jack Daniels is over 100 years old. I didn't know that.
Jack Daniels has given so much back to art and to music and has been part of culture forever.
What would Jack Daniels be without rock and roll, or what would rock and roll be without?
No, there's no... Jack Daniels would be exactly the same without rock and roll, but rock and roll would never be the same without Jack Daniels, and you know that. Imagine if there was no Jack Daniels and every band was drinking like Jim Beam. Then they'd all sound like Kid Rock. Sorry.
Led Zeppelin. Yes. Jack Daniels was a legend then, and he thought, the American dream, California, Jack Daniels and Coke, and he tried it and he liked it. When he was drinking vodka, he wrote Ace of Spades and, all that kind of stuff. When he started drinking Jack, he got kind of more bluesy and mature, if you like.
We went on tour with Guns N' Roses in the early 90s. In some of the arenas that we were in, Frank Sinatra was just ahead of us. So we'd go into the backstage area and we'd say, hey, Frank Sinatra's coming in, he'd have his rider. And what did he have on his rider? Bottle of Jack Daniels and a glass. That was it. He didn't have vegetables. He didn't have fruit plate.
You make me feel so young. You make me feel that spring has sprung.
I remember Jack Daniels being in Dad's social makeup. It was a fixture in his life. He set a style and a tone. That's really the Guns N' Roses, that circa. That's where they come from.
If you had to sort of summarize what Jack Daniels means to you, what would that be?
My dad happy. My dad having fun.
A dream that
Pop culture has been phenomenally important. It's been people like Sinatra, it's been people like Keith Richards from the Rolling Stones, Slash from the Guns N' Roses. We never paid for any of that. The challenge that we've got moving forward is that you don't get much of that stuff for free these days.
He drank out of it, apparently. $250. That's all. We have one swig.
How you doing, Linda?
Jack Daniels kicked my ass again last night.
And for me, as a guy who's played music and played everywhere, I've tried everything, drank everything. And it's just, it's me, it's the DNA.
You know, were there musicians that you remember saying, you know, this is like a connection to the rock and roll and the music, like anybody?
Lemmy, I used to hold it a lot. But I mean, for me, I don't ever drink a product because I thought it made me cool. It's what I enjoyed. I felt like it connected me more to my grandfather and what he drank. And it's a generational thing, you know, so I don't know the reason he drank it. Could be taste, or it could be what his grandfather or father drank.
Dad, kick my ass again. What is it?
It all starts with the wood. That's the very first ingredient for Jack Daniels. Our company promotes wise use land management, promotes sustainability. And it's not just timber, it's about the water, it's about the wildlife, it's about the air we breathe and everything that's associated with an ecosystem.
White oak's the only thing that can be used is because the pores on the white oaks are real tight, so it doesn't let the whiskey leak through. Red oak, the whiskey would leak through the barrels.
What is a white oak tree? It's basically a carbohydrate plant, and it's full of sugars. You think of the barrel, you think about it as being a giant sugar cube that we put whiskey in. Cutting trees is natural. It's a renewable resource. It's something that we have the capability of sustaining for many, many generations to come.
Well, the sun talks about blue sky, clouds talk about rain, and the world keeps on turning. Yeah, the world keeps turning round, just doing what comes naturally by gravity tethered to the ground.
It's all in the barrels. The barrels are what get the taste and the flavor and stuff like that. It's all in the barrel.
Most people don't have a full appreciation for what the barrel, what the wood, what the char brings to the whiskey. Without wood, it'd be moonshine. It wouldn't be whiskey. It lacked the flavor, it lacked the vanilla character, it would lack the color. It wouldn't be whiskey. For Tennessee whiskey, it's got to be a new charred white oak barrel. And so we use them one time, and then from there it'll go over to Scotland or Ireland, any of the other places that can use a used barrel, but we can't.
I bet a lot of people that drink scotch don't realize
that there's a little Jack in their scotch.
Nice soft mouthfeel, a little bit of acidity at the sides of the tongue. It's like eating a very soft sponge, you know, soft mouth filling, but then this little tweak at the sides of the tongue, the acidity, and then quite a long finish actually. I put a tiny bit too much water in there, but the easy, you know, easy drinking. But you wouldn't put Coca-Cola in that. Whiskey is the most complex spirit known to man. Number 7, the standard Jack Daniels, has a very clear, it's not a very complex whiskey. A lot of the flavor comes from the fresh oak. It's traditionally drunk with Coke or cola of one sort or another and ice. And the flavor comes through. A sophisticated Scotch malt, you wouldn't get that flavor coming through. So it's no point in drinking with Coke.
Vodka's a functional drink. Whiskey's an emotional drink. Whiskey is a gregarious spirit that thrives in company.
I've always been quite a wine lover. I suppose gin, yeah, I suppose I drank gin. But now I probably wouldn't, if I had the choice, yeah, it would always be whiskey now.
I run a ladies-only whiskey club. I don't think it's a particular style of person who would drink whiskey.
Jack Daniel overtakes traditional whiskey as Britain's favourite. Bullshit. No, that's a generous line. I think you'd probably find that vodka outsells Jack Daniels, and you know, good luck to them. There's more Jack sold than Scotch.
The two sides of the pond have a massively symbiotic relationship. So the guys who are making the whiskey barrels, you must use new oak barrels only once. That left Scots people with a great opportunity because we are canny and a wee bit clever with money, and we have no issue accepting second-hand goods. So, once they've already been used for bourbon, you guys can't use them anymore. Doesn't mean we can't use them.
Welcome to Glenmorangie Stillhouse. And these are the tallest stills of any malt distillery in Scotland. So what that does for the whiskey is it makes a very, very light, very pure style of whiskey. So the Glenmorangie spirit is rising up through the head of the still, one step closer to heaven, I call it. So it gets up over the top into the condenser, and then it's back into the spirit safe. So it goes from liquid to vapor to liquid. The ishkipe is what we call it, the water of life. Ishkipe is where the word whiskey comes from. We reckon about 60% of the flavour of Glenmorangie single malt whiskey is coming from the cask. 40% of the flavour and the aroma is coming from the raw spirit. So, come into the warehouse. The majority of our new make spirit comes down and we fill into the ex-American bourbon barrels, like this one here, okay? So these have been shipped over from the States, from Jack Daniels, for example, and we fill our spirit straight into them. You can see we've got bigger casks in here. We've got a variety of distilleries that we use, Heaven Hill, Jim Beam, we use a few different types of Tennessee whiskey or bourbon whiskey.
Was there ever a time when Scotch was making its own barrels?
No, because the Scotch oak just doesn't have the quality. The trees aren't straight enough. I'm going to draw a sample out of this first fill American barrel, ex Jack Daniels cask. Delicious. It's a real good partnership, over the pond, the other side of the pond from us, Without that industry, Scotch would be struggling, to be honest, So it's nice to have that relationship with our buddies over the water,
That's the nice thing about Lynchburg. Everything is nice and quiet in the morning. Morning, Parks. I have 9 people on my crew. Have to rely on teamwork, and it takes every one of us to get the barrels out of the warehouse and get them to the dump room. You can use modern technology only to do so much, but as far as actually working the warehouses, no, that's pretty much unchanged. It's just something that's been handed down from generation to generation. What I like about this job is it's just me and the guys, and basically the camaraderie, that's shared between us. They're not just my co-workers, they're really more like an extension of my family, and I feel that way about each and every one of them. We know that the whiskey does not get to the bottles if we don't do our job, so it's something we take great pride in. It may be kind of cliche to say it, but I think the people are everything.
We have over 2 million barrels on site with whiskey in it. I've never done that math before, how many bottles that would be. That's probably 60-some million cases or something. I don't.
This is not like part of the tour over here, obviously.
No.
Do you think most people might be surprised to see how many warehouses you have full of whiskey?
Probably, but I would think, a knowledgeable person, can get on the internet and see how many cases of whiskey we sell a year or how much we do. You have to store that somewhere. These are palletized warehouses, so they're a little different than the Rick style houses, and they're a little bigger. We built the first house as a test house that R&D ran, and We found out that we could mature barrels just as well in this house as we could a big house.
Do you know how many are in here right now?
There are 66,528 barrels in here, is what they hold.
And that's are all the other buildings around here the same?
Yes, all the palletized hold the same.
Yeah. So how many palletized do you guys have?
13. If you really look at it, I mean, as far as efficiency, one person can drive a tow motor and be in the house putting barrels up. Whereas in a regular house, you know, you've got 9 people in there putting barrels up.
I just want to touch real quick on, nobody really wanted us to see this on camera, and it's not something you'd see in an ad. Why do you think that is?
I just don't think it has the nostalgia of the old wooden warehouses like we have up at Track 1 around the distillery and sitting at Track 2. But as far as warehousing goes, I mean, this is more efficient and matures just as well. We've always got all the older style warehouses we'll never get rid of. We'll just build these as we move forward as needed.
I work with my boss, Mike Myers, on some days and what whiskey exactly to pull. So we know where all the barrels are and at what point they're ready to be pulled. I've been here almost 16 years now. I'm just a couple of weeks shy of my 16th anniversary. Till you get 20 years in, you're still fairly new. I'm still waiting on that 20th year and an extra week of vacation. More time to deer hunting.
I just realized there's only one rifle in here, right?
Yeah.
How does it normally work? Like, who gets to decide who shoots?
Normally, there would only be one person in here, but somebody who we're not going to name has already killed his buck out of here for the year.
Some random person brought up like the advertising, how it's like it feels so real. You think the people that make it are just as important as like the whiskey that's in that bottle to someone like in China that's drinking it?
It's an interesting question. I don't know. What do you think?
Put me on the spot. I don't know. I'm thinking, I guess in the South, I say in the South because I've always lived in the South, but generally people have a sense of pride about what they do, regardless of what they do. And I can especially say that I feel at Jack Daniel's that I can genuinely say that everybody works there that I know, has pride in their job, wants to do their job to the best of their ability. And I think maybe that just carries over into the product.
I like to think that if people would, if they want a taste of America, that we're putting it in that black labeled bottle.
This glass right here, this shot glass we all three just drank, is the epitome of America in a glass. It really is. It's bold, it's flavorful, it's loud, but it's good. That is America in a glass right there.
The drinks we just took, they were small, little small drinks, but a lot of hard work went to all three of those.
Oh, God, yeah.
There was, the time alone is kind of, I ain't gonna say mind-blowing, but I've never waited on anything for 4 years.
Yeah, I try. And there's other good whiskeys out there. I'm not going to sit there and tell you there's not. But overall, as a brand from top to bottom, it's going to be hard to beat what we're doing.
I feel like you guys, since you're around Jack so much, if somebody talked to you in like a taste test,
Oh yeah, yeah, by far.
I'll probably tell you about the smell.
So, try to get it.
Yeah.
Which one's Jack?
First that one.
Jack Daniels. Glenlivet Scotch. Glenlivet Scotch. Suntory Japanese whiskey.
That's why the Japanese drink so much Jack Daniels, because they make shitty whiskey.
But they keep winning these like best whiskey awards.
Are you familiar with Taylor Swift?
Heard of them.
Yeah. She wins a bunch of awards.
I have an apple, pineapple pen, apple pen, pineapple pen, pen pineapple.
Jack Daniels is the reason why I'm here. I was in high school and I found a bottle of Jack Daniels in my parents' room. I tried it. It tastes awful. It's like the first time I had a cigarette, like coffee or wasabi. And the next day I tried mixed with Coke or orange juice or ginger ale. And 20 years later, I'm still doing the same thing in this bar. Japanese whiskeys has won awards, and most people doesn't know the truth of it. If it's distilled in America or Scotland or other places, and the barrel is carried in Japan, and then if it's bottled in Japan, from that moment it turns into Japanese whiskey. So this is gonna be the smoked martini. This one, the 1984 version of the Jack Daniels. It's only a sip left, so yeah, I tried to keep it, like hide it. The color is completely different. The taste is also has to be different. It's aging. It's like people, it's like human. Maybe the alcohol is not strong as the current one, but it still has to be gentle. Like my father, like my grandpa.
That's one thing I found interesting in Japan is they're really into American stuff. I saw the truck on the street and they're selling Lipton tea with fresh fruit. And the line was over 3 blocks. So it's just kind of Western things, I think, kind of steer their interest of wanting to try.
If you see somebody in the bar next to you order Jack Daniels, does that tell you anything about them in your mind?
I would think that this person is interested in Western culture, that especially American culture probably.
インスピレーションがあって、あとマーロン・ブランド、ワイルド・ワンっていう映画で。この2人で、どちらの方が髪の毛セットするのに時間がかかりますか？
どっちかね。どれだけか30分ぐらい。俺1時間。俺だ。
どうして例えばですけどもウイスキーがロックンロール
回ることがやっぱりロックンロールと思う。ロックンロールってのはロールだからね。絶えず回って流れていくことがロックンロールだと思うんで、ロックンロールって過去のものじゃないんですよ。今やってることがロックンロールだと。
クールって何ですか？まあブレないってことですね。だからブレない。いやもう好きなことをずっとね、もうじゃあこれがあれだからこっち行こうとかじゃなくて一つのことを一生懸命やってる。いやジャック・ダニエルはやっぱクールだね。150年。ね。
People who don't even like to drink whiskey will wear a black and white Jack Daniel's label T-shirt because there is a bit of the rebel. I mean, independence, being your own person. Independence and being your own person can get messy too. There's a nice, noble side of that, and then there's a messy, darker side to that. You find out, not every shade of who you are is necessarily something that you need to be proud of. So it's complicated. It's not as black and white as the label appears.
I was a third-year law student at Ole Miss in 1980, 81, and I got lucky and got a job as an assistant for Judge Sweat, who at that point was a professor at Ole Miss teaching ethics. And so I hung out with him a lot. He'd already served in the state legislature for a long time. He'd been a judge. We called him Judge Sweat. We knew his nickname was Soggy, but we didn't call him Soggy. And I asked Judge Sweat if he'd ever written anything. And he said he thought about it. He'd only written one thing that was somewhat famous. And he pulled a whiskey speech out of a drawer. It was fascinating. It went back 30 years earlier. The hottest issue in Mississippi in the 1950s was whiskey. Every politician hated the question, what's your stance on whiskey? Because you're gonna get half of it right, half the votes, and lose the other half. And so most politicians didn't want to touch it. To address that, Soggy wrote this speech, and it became famous. Because there's a lot of truth on both sides. There's some really bad stuff that happens because of it in my family. And there's a lot of benefit that comes from it that people really enjoy.
When you've got a brand that's all about freedom and you live in a country that accentuates the idea of individuality and freedom, there's a dark side of that because people left to their own devices, given complete freedom, will do some things that, are not so constructive to them or the rest of us.
You can't have Mardi Gras without drinking.
I think there are only two ingredients to Mardi Gras: costumes and alcohol.
I've been everywhere, Daytona 500. I've been to Indianapolis 500. I've been to
Sturgis, Daytona 500.
Daytona. I've been all over, but nothing can compare to what I've seen here.
Why do you guys drink alcohol?
It lets all the worries wash right away, man. Lets you enjoy what you're doing at the time. Well, for me, drinking means we meet a lot of new people. Socializing. It kind of looks like fun to me. So
it helps you socialize?
Yeah.
What's the worst thing that's ever happened to you because of alcohol?
Jail. Incarceration.
Do you know anybody that's had bigger problems because of alcohol?
Yeah, most definitely.
Way worse.
Hey, do it responsibly. I mean, don't think it's cool to get up and go drive, man. As long as your drinking doesn't affect other people's good time, that's a good night of drinking, in my opinion.
I mean, real quick, one word. I'll say a type of alcohol, you say one word to describe it. Beer.
Piss.
Wine.
Cougars.
Headache. Vodka.
Cranberry.
Tequila.
Woo!
Whiskey.
Hangover.
Jack Daniels.
Yeah!
If you drink one liquor all night long and don't bitch, you don't have a hangover. That's a secret?
That's the secret.
As soon as your hangover's done, are you ready for more?
No, sir. I'm a once a month type drinker myself. Bitch, you've been drinking for a week. I know, we're in Mardi Gras though.
Believe it or not, we do more DUIs than most people think we do. You're going to have some problems. You're going to have problems with people coming through and such as that, with alcohol problems and things like that. But it's not bad here. Not bad at all. Not like it used to be. Lynchburg and Moore County, of course, that's one of its claim to fame, is we got the most popular whiskey in the world. And where it's made, it's a dry county. And that'll never change. There is so many churches and church-going people here that if it even got put on a referendum ballot to be voted on, it would never make it here. We try to keep our community quiet. We try to take care of everybody, and we're not in the newspaper all the time. We've actually had a tractor-trailer load of whiskey stolen. That load went to Miami, and we have never so much as recovered a bottle of it. It's like it disappeared off the face of the earth.
Sí, sabe, un whisky desapareció en Estados Unidos, un contenedor lleno de whisky, y encontraron el camión vacío en Miami. ¿Tú crees que puede ser que por una casualidad este whisky podría llegar aquí a Cuba con un barco o en otra manera?
Maybe.
Huh?
Maybe, I don't know, but it's maybe. United States and Cuba is very close.
If we go to a bar here, a private bar, and we see Jack Daniels, is it most likely someone like you brought it into the country?
Sí, hay personas que tú le puedes encargar los objetivos que quieres, las cosas que quieres, que tienen posibilidad de salir y entrar del país y las traen. Todo legalmente, sales, te hacen un pedido de cosas que quieren, bebidas, ropa, zapatos, vas a cualquier país que sea libre de visado y lo entras y haces el business así. Y así es como muchas veces aparecen las cosas.
Do you get to make a living doing that? Is that your full-time work?
Sí, claro. Claro, tú me haces un pedido, ejemplo, bebida, como usted preguntaba. Y aquí hay un límite de bebidas que se pueden entrar, se las traigo por encargo, o bebidas, o cualquier cosa, la ropa, los zapatos.
So if it's not illegal, why are you worried about us seeing your face?
Es que realmente, ¿para qué salir así? Si al final tú sabes que siempre, por un lado o por el otro, te afecta un poco.
Mi tatuaje, yo pienso, casi todos los tatuajes que tengo tienen que ver con algo de mi vida y me gusta la bebida, me gusta probar mucho. De mis bebidas preferidas es el whisky y una de ellas es Jack Daniels, ¿sabes?
When you see a bottle of Jack Daniels in a bar, what does it represent to you?
Yo pienso que representa algo como... Es algo de historia, no solamente es alcohol, ¿sabes? Es trabajo. Trabajaron en hacer esa bebida. Para mí es agradable.
If we're looking down and we're thinking, okay, there's little tiny Lynchburg, it would really seem small, but yet it's really big. So the story could be really, it could be huge.
And is it just as simple as a story about a brand, or is it more complicated than that?
I don't think it's complicated. It's just more to the story. Yeah.
Whiskey is more than about the liquid in the bottle. Whiskey is all about history. It's about America. It's about people going off on their own and making something.
We have Jack Daniels bank book from the 1870s.
December 2nd of 1876. So the distillery's been around 10 years?
Approximately, yes.
Yeah. Everything looks like it's in the hundreds of dollars, not the thousands of dollars.
Correct. He's a big fish in a little pond at this point.
Yeah, right here's Jack's signature.
There seems to be a real importance in the bourbon world and the American whiskey world for a brand to have a story. And we see a lot of people trying to create history. They'll have a really cool label, and then they'll have a history after they've already developed the brand. With Jack Daniel's, it's just the opposite. I mean, this is a brand born of history. Here's this little guy, 5'2", probably has a chip on his shoulder because he always looks younger than he is. He's the last of 10 children in his family. He sets off at an early age and makes something of himself. That's a classic American story. We couldn't have scripted it better.
Can there be a brand that has a history of 150 years and have all these true stories that you're able to have as like a gold mine for marketing stuff? Can that be there and exist without controversial stories?
Oh, I mean, there's all kinds of controversy about the story of Jack Daniel's. Whenever you base a brand on authenticity and truth, I mean, that's a difficult thing to look back 150 years and know entirely what was happening when.
The world has tried to make this a controversy because we have been conditioned to see conflict. Very quickly, people had erroneously concluded that Jack Daniel was a slave owner, that Nearest was his slave, and so they turned this story into a story of conflict. But it isn't. It's a story of love. Has been from day one, and it is now.
Author Fawn Weaver first learned the story while reading an article in the New York Times. The story had such an impact on Weaver, it became an obsession. She shared her treasure trove of history with the president of the company.
He looked at the research room, he looked at a few things, and he said, how do we make it right? Immediately.
The lesson's not don't tell the story. The lesson is tell the story authentically and then just have the conversations. But I want to keep doing that. I don't think Jack Daniel's has to be a social commentator, but I do think Jack Daniel's has permission to tell its stories.
This is taken after the turn of the century in Lynchburg, Tennessee, in the South. It would have been highly unusual for a company portrait to be made and an African-American gentleman to be seated immediately to the right of the owner. Jack has no problem with it. There are still people today that don't know that Jack Daniels was a real person. There's still people today that don't know that Jack Daniels is charcoal mellowed. So it's not hard for me to imagine that there are people who don't know about Nearest Green. An African-American slave is the person that Jack worked side by side with at the Dan Calls Still, where he learned to make whiskey.
Jack and Nearest were not just friends, but Nearest was Jack's mentor. Got to remember, Jack was the 10th child. His mother died at 4 months old. He was wet nursed by the next door neighbor. This was not a life of glamour. So once you start stripping that back and realize that this kid showed up at this farm as a chore boy to do chores because the life he had at home was not great, then all of a sudden his ability to really relate to Nearest and to see him as a father figure or an uncle figure, it's not that odd because you have a kid that would have just been looking for love and direction, and he found that in Nearest.
Here was a young guy that through part of the Civil War and definitely after the end of the Civil War, he was working side by side with an African American. We feel pretty good that this is probably Nearest's son, George. George and Eli, two of Nearest's sons, would come to work with Jack Daniels at the Cave Spring Hollow.
I think that Jack and Nearest helped to create something special here in Lynchburg because somehow they didn't recognize color. And in the midst of what was going on during the Civil War, immediately following the Civil War, they somehow were able to create this community of people in which everyone was side by side. This is not your typical black-white story out of the South at that time. These people were family.
I think he'd been proud that the story was told because it's the absolute truth. It's just one more reason that people can enjoy Jack Daniels and honor what America's about, which is really working together and not working at cross purposes.
So this right up here is where the Dan Call farm is, where we're turning in, where you see the white picket fence. This is it right here. This was actually where the original steel was.
I've been working here for 22 years. There's always been someone in my family working here. It goes back to the beginning, to when Jack first started. I'm the great-great-grandson of Nearest Green.
My great-great-grandfather, Nearest Green. This is where he made the whiskey for Jack Daniel. As descendants of his, it is an honor. To tell the truth means a whole lot.
The real truth in Jack Daniels is some of those rich, rich details in stories like Nearest Green. It's hard to remain dedicated to that in a time which places so much importance on what's new and what's different, instead of what's lasting and true and timeless. The fact that Jack Daniels remained unchanged through Prohibition and World Wars, it's just the real deal.
Spirit of Hamburg, now entering Bontebay. Spirit of Hamburg, Sydney Port, CTS. Understood, now entering Botany Bay. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's just another drink, yeah.
You said this is better than the bottle you had previously?
Yeah.
You think that's just because you know what this particular bottle went through to get here, or you really think it's better?
I really think it's better. As soon as I cracked it open and I first poured it and took that first drink, I went, oh my God, this is...
It's not. It's the exact
I
same.
know, it's exactly the same. So maybe it is subconsciously.
So is that somewhat of a proof that a story behind a drink might make it taste better in your mind?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. I've been working in pubs and clubs most of my life, you know, since I've been old enough to. And you just pull the bottle off the shelf and you pour it. You don't think, oh, geez, somebody's really put their heart and soul in this. You don't. You just drink it. It's the same as beer, it's the same as anything. But I guess it's all had to start from somewhere. You just don't think about it.
All of that made it taste better to you, though.
Yeah. Subconsciously, obviously. I don't know, I might have to have another bottle to see.
It's beautiful.